In 2026, big tech will pour roughly $700 billion into AI hardware and data centers, racks of Nvidia GPUs, new buildings, and enough power to run several small countries. Best case estimates say all the generative AI products on Earth combined might bring in around $100 billion of revenue this year. That's maybe 15 cents of revenue for every dollar of AI CapEx being spent. If somebody told you we're going to invest $700 billion this year to return 15 cents on the dollar, you'd call that what it is, a terrible strategy. In this episode, I want to consider a simple question. What if AI, as a business model, is fundamentally broken in a way that can't be fixed? Thousands of web pages and terabytes of YouTube server space have been used to examine every possible nightmare scenario with AI. It's taking jobs, taking the economy, replacing humans, and straining our markets and financial systems. We all better be ready to take up arms against our machine overlords or become Matrix-style human-shaped fuel. But before AI-controlled sentinels shove us in those fuel pods, what if the whole AI industry collapses under its own weight because it refuses to acknowledge the basic arithmetic of the business model? Here's some of that basic math of which I speak. Microsoft plans to spend $190 billion in 2026 primarily to increase compute for AI. Most analysts predict they will generate $35 billion in revenue tied to AI products. Amazon plans to spend roughly $200 billion in AI CapEx in 2026 and is likely to generate only $20 billion in AI revenue. Alphabet says it will spend between $175 and $185 billion to support their AI build-out. Business Insider believes AI revenue for Alphabet would top out at $20 billion. Now, I'm no mathematician, and my mother would tell you math is one of my more glaring deficiencies, but I do own a calculator, and even I can see this arithmetic previews some truly terrible P&L numbers. You know, one of the best ways to support small YouTube channels like mine is to subscribe. If you like the content and you'd like to see more of it, consider subscribing. Back to the episode. You could try to make the argument that as long as these companies kept incrementally increasing their AI product revenue, they would eventually surpass their CapEx spend and turn a profit. Problem is, these companies are expected to increase, not decrease, their spending. Consensus on Wall Street and among analysts projects AI CapEx to increase to over $1 trillion in 2027 and ballooning to $1.6 trillion by 2031. If you look at AI revenue as a percentage of these companies' total revenue, the numbers don't get any better. Microsoft is at 13%, Alphabet at 6%, and Amazon just 2%. Frontier technologies are always expensive and operate at a loss for years. That's super normal, right? Sure, but when the gap between spending and revenue never shrinks or shrinks very slowly, the business model is under constant pressure. And we've seen this play out before. In the fiber boom, telecoms spent the rough equivalent of $100 billion on network capacity that took more than a decade for internet traffic to grow into. And many of those companies that paid for those lines either went bankrupt or got bought for scraps. Today, big tech is talking about spending $700 billion a year and heading towards $1 trillion. Alphabet, Amazon, and Microsoft can subsidize most of this build-out because of their huge cash flows. But that subsidy creates massive drag on the company's earnings. And when that drag doesn't present a clear path to profitability, you have to wonder how long they keep throwing money into the black hole of data centers, compute, and AI. These mega cap companies will inevitably have to explain to their boards and their shareholders how they justify this investment in what could be a very uncertain payback period. By the end of 2026, hyperscalers will have poured as much as $1.5 trillion into AI-heavy infrastructure just in 2025 and 2026 alone. If combined generative AI revenue in 2026 is roughly $80 to $120 billion, you're looking at 10 to 15 years of 2026 level revenue just to equal that 2-year CapEx spend. Yahoo Finance is forecasting there will be between 4 and 8 trillion in AI-related CapEx this decade, and even Goldman Sachs' most bullish forecast only shows $200 to $300 billion per year in generative AI revenue by 2030. Even in the most optimistic scenario, by 2030, they have maybe accumulated $1 to $1.5 trillion of AI revenue against 4 to 8 trillion of AI CapEx. And then you have to ask, what about all these other companies with massive AI spend plan that don't have the deep pockets of a Mag 7 company? In 2025, OpenAI generated around $20 billion in revenue, Anthropic made $5 billion, and xAI, not including X ad revenue, $500 million. OpenAI generated an $8 billion loss. Anthropic publicly committed to spending $50 billion to compute on $5 billion of revenue, and the poser AI company XAI lost $13 billion in 2025. In case all those numbers run together in your head, the punchline is that AI companies' spend will continue expanding, not level off or shrink, and most industry analysts see the gap between the revenue and spend increasing, not decreasing. And that is, at the very least, unsustainable. But what would it take for this to actually work out? Let's say compute gets much less costly, or chips get more efficient, or the model starts figuring out how to decrease inference costs. Again, this is where a seemingly complex question has a painfully simple answer. One of two things needs to happen: increase revenue or decrease costs. The revenue generated by AI products would have to increase at least 500%, and that's assuming the spend on AI flattens out. Profit margins are a function of both revenue and cost. Right now, the hyperscalers are carrying negative profit margins. XAI highlights how far away any entity could possibly be from that profit margin, having spent about $13 billion in 2025 on just $500 million in revenue, a 26-time spend to revenue ratio. The good news for Elon is that he's already offloaded XAI onto SpaceX and soon the SpaceX investors. If you just looked at the revenue side, these hyperscalers need two things to happen to create a path to profitability. First, these free models need to go away and individual paid plans need to exceed the cost of providing it, which means pricing plans of $20 per month may need to cost $120 per month. Second, enterprise-level adoption has to accelerate much faster than projected. Goldman Sachs projects AI to be 9 to 10% of IT budgets within large corporations over the next few years, not the 40% it would need to be to support the argument AI revenue will start to reach the hundreds of billions required for this business model to make any sense. In addition, CapEx must be decoupled from the hype. This includes data center buildouts and chip purchases to address demand that may be 5 years away. For any Econ 101 students out there, you can zoom out and look at the basic supply and demand within AI. We currently have a glut of capacity, despite what Sam Altman tells us. Run out of your free credits on OpenAI? Open Claude. Maxed out on Claude? Open Copilot. And in that Econ 101 class, you will have also learned that when you have too much supply, demand is spread across that supply. Pricing falls and value flows to the buyer, not the seller. So they need to spend less and make more. Like I said, it's simple. But while the concept and prescription are simple, the execution may be daunting for these hyperscalers who have operated with cheap money and patient shareholders. They've been able to spin grand stories of the transformative nature of AI, the personal and professional economic benefits of being AI forward, and the inevitability of success for everyone involved in building these monster P&Ls. And until now, they've gotten away with it because it all sounds so damn appealing. Every week, someone announces another $100 billion AI investment, usually into a company with embarrassing little revenue. Yet we seem to learn nothing, piling more cash into companies that have shown an inability to operate a scalable business model. So here's what to watch. Does enterprise adoption actually accelerate, or is it relegated to a talking point on earnings calls? Do those free LLM tiers start disappearing? Will the CapEx get under control, or will the spending just keep chasing a revenue number it can never catch? But you can't afford to just point and laugh if these companies burn to the ground, because your employer already restructured around a promise that may never be realized. Your retirement account already holds shares in these companies, spending like sailors on shore leave. And the moment these companies must answer for the math, they'll answer it with hiring freezes, layoffs, and a market correction that lands on everyone. So if these companies starve themselves out, they're going to take a piece of you with them. That's it for this episode. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.